This is Minecraft. Recently, I upgraded my computer and I want to see how well it can run Minecraft. Today, we'll be taking a look at Ardacraft, which is a Minecraft server and mod pack that has a team dedicated to recreating Middle-earth by the books. In today's video, I want to explore Ardacraft, checking out some iconic locations, and to see what it's like to play Minecraft with these mods installed. So here we are on Ardacraft. And as you can see, it just looks absolutely fantastic. So thanks to mods like Distant Horizons, we can literally see thousands of blocks away, and it really helps you appreciate the scale of the landscape here. Recently, I upgraded my computer, and a lot of people were asking me what my specs are. So currently I have a Ryzen 9 9900X, a RTX 5070, and 32GB of DDR5 Ram. And Minecraft is notoriously CPU intensive, and I noticed that running AM5, the game runs a lot smoother, especially modded versions like we have here. So the main mod that we're seeing here is called Conquest Reforged. So you can see, making our way down the pathway here, all the different layers of dirt and terrain. So the best way to think about Conquest Reforged is it really works like snow from vanilla Minecraft, and it allows you to build things very incrementally. So making our way down here towards the water mill here in the center of town, you can see Ardacraft also uses things like create to have some animated elements throughout the world. And the water just looks absolutely fantastic, and that's thanks to the Bliss shaders, which Ardacraft includes in the mod pack. So currently we're just walking around Hobbiton, and this is just a single location. A little bit later on, we'll be exploring some more iconic locations from the Lord of the Rings, like Isengard and Rivendell. But before we get into that, if you're a fan of chill, long-form gaming content, you're in the right place because that's all I do. A lot of people have been finding the channel lately, so this is just a quick reminder to check if you're subscribed. It's totally free and you can always change your mind later. So Ardacraft is based on the books rather than the movies, so some of the locations may look slightly different than how you remember seeing them. So what's really crazy about this map is that it is literally 70 times the size of Skyrim, and it was all player made, so nothing you see here was randomly generated. So what's really cool is that all these trails actually lead somewhere, and if you follow them long enough, you will find new locations. So even though we're just walking through Hobbiton right now, we could theoretically follow this trail all the way to another location or settlement, and that's what makes Ardacraft really special. But let's take a step inside here really quick. You can just kind of see all the detail that goes into like the interiors here. It's actually kind of amazing. So Ardacraft is a team of builders and volunteers. Nobody's getting paid to make this map, and I think that's what kind of makes it so special, is that it was just made purely out of the love for Tolkien's works. I feel like every location you visit really brings that to life, and you can really feel it when you're exploring. So another really cool feature is actually the Pathfinder. So as you can see here, 23rd of September, Frodo, Sam, and Pippin set out. And what's really cool about this item is that you can actually follow along with the characters and follow their journey in real time, which I think is just amazing. So we have this little golden trail that we can follow along with. Wishing to avoid unfriendly eyes, they head west in order to skirt around Hobbiton. So if you want more of a structured sort of experience, I think this is a great way to experience this map. And I could definitely imagine listening to the audiobook while you're playing through this, maybe have some Lord of the Rings original soundtrack playing as well. So it's really up to you if you want to explore the map in a free-form sort of way, or if you want to follow along with the storyline. So like I was mentioning, every single pathway eventually leads somewhere. So we're just on the outskirts of Bree right now. And what makes Ardacraft really special is that these aren't all individual maps or locations. You can pretty much walk anywhere you'd want to go. So right now we're just following a small little trail over to Bree. And I think what's really cool is all the little locations that you can stop at. So, you know, right here we just have a little farmhouse. And every location actually has an interior, so there's not just some sort of like... So there's not any empty buildings that you're going to find or any wasted space. And you even have small little elements of storytelling, like right here they're doing their laundry along the riverside here. And I can't get over how good the water looks in the Bliss shaders. So a little bit later on, I want to stop by the Falls of Rhoros so we can really appreciate the water on a grand scale. But just on the outside of Bree here, we're passing by huge fields of crops. So from an aesthetic standpoint, these fields of crops look absolutely fantastic. But I think what's really amazing is not only do they look aesthetically pleasing, they actually serve a purpose. So a couple months back, I actually had the opportunity to do a video with Fornad, the founder of Ardacraft, and he was gracious enough to show me some behind the scenes inner workings and looks at the Ardacraft server, and the amount of detail that they actually go into to actually do farmland like this was just absolutely incredible. So they literally have documents full of pages detailing how farming actually works. And you may notice as we were making our way along, we actually have these custom trees here, and it's pretty incredible the amount of detail you're able to get in Conquest Reforged. So there's actually dedicated people that just like doing trees or maybe just like decorating, and it's really cool. Everybody has their own specialty. So you can see just off in the distance, we have a windmill that we'll make our way to in just a little bit, but let's make our way to the town of Bree. So if you remember from the movies, Bree is where they meet Strider in the tavern. But just seeing all the detail that goes into the build is kind of incredible. I really like details like this, where you have a broken wall and maybe some rubble here. You can also see a ladder from where they were trying to repair everything. This is just so cool. So I don't really have the deepest knowledge about Middle-earth. So most of my perspective is just from somebody who enjoys Minecraft. But I think for somebody who really loves Tolkien's works, this is such a fun way to immerse yourself in the world. So what I do know about Bree is that it's one of the oldest settlements in Middle-earth. So what's really cool that I think the builders did to reflect that is you can see how much age is actually in the stone. So you have much older stone here on the bottom, and then much newer stone spread throughout here. And I think that's a fantastic way to show like the history and the age of this settlement. But here we are at the Prancing Pony. So before we check out the Prancing Pony, I want to check out just a couple interior locations, just to show the amount of detail that goes into stuff like this. So stepping inside here, you can see we have a nice little loft going up, wagon with some stores on there. I like that the team of builders actually goes into the detail of doing the interior for all the locations. Everything just kind of makes sense. So there's storages, there's living spaces. You can even hear some like birds chirping off in the woods somewhere. It's just very serene and very peaceful. I feel like there's just something so special about this map that words can't really convey. Just the amount of love and detail that goes into a map like this, it's incredible to me, you know? I don't even think AAA game studios really capture this same sort of vibe. And you know, that's something only people with a real passion for what they're doing can actually create. Bree by itself is a fantastic location, and this could honestly be a build by itself, but the fact that this is just one of literally hundreds of builds really blows my mind. So you can see things like farmland just on the outskirts of town here. But let's head back to town and actually check out the Prancing Pony. I really like the inclusion of like some animal sprites here, just giving some life to the world. And I also love all the timbering too. That's like a crazy detail to me. I've played Conquest Reforged before, but my skill level compared to what they've done here on Ardacraft it's just totally different leagues. But here we are inside the Prancing Pony. This is where they would meet Strider. He'd probably be sitting around here. After making such a long journey from Hobbiton to Bree, you definitely want to stop here for the night and just relax. But unfortunately for our characters, they don't really get much time to relax here. Got some back rooms here. Even a little courtyard where they have some livestock. So for those who are curious what it looks like to play without shaders, I'll quickly disable them so you guys can take a look. So without shaders, you can see everything still, I honestly like the way the game looks without shaders, but I think for the sake of the video, most people are going to want shaders on. But you can see even without shaders, the world still looks beautiful. And it just goes to show that you don't really need a high-end PC to play on this server. From what I know, the Ardacraft team has a huge variety of builders all on different hardware. So you can change the settings depending on what you're looking for and what your hardware is. I think without shaders, you get a really clear view of all the different texturing that goes into the builds. So it makes it really easy to see all the different individual blocks that were used to create these super smooth and realistic looking builds. But I'm going to quickly turn shaders back on. This is what really gives this server that realistic look and feel. So earlier I mentioned the Pathfinder, and we were following Frodo's path, But there's a variety of characters we can check out here. So if we check out Aragorn's path, for example, you can actually follow along with him. So just outside the prancing pony, you can see his path is a different color. They managed to acquire a single pony, an underfed and dispirited animal named Bill. So it's super cool. You can pick who you want to follow along with. But just making our way through Bree, I actually really like this little set piece here with the tree growing out. We have huge fields. I really like this detail of a log for some reason. For me, I nerd out about the details. I'm definitely more of a detail builder than I am like a macro person. So I really like appreciating those semblance of life and character in builds. So like the subtle little rock formations that they have here. This nice slope of texture going up. And I think this build really illustrates how old Bree is. You can see how overgrown things are here. And then here you can actually see they're like repairing it a little bit. So there's some newly exposed material underneath all this moss here. But one thing that stands out to me is how different the architecture is from, for example, starting off at Bree here. Whenever we head to Rivendell, you can see the architecture is totally different because Rivendell is an elven settlement. But in here we just have like a nice little trading post. So before we head to Rivendell, I just want to check out that windmill that we saw as we were making our way to town. Along the way, we're just going to be passing through some of the farmland. Get to see all the different shops and workstations that people are at. But this is so cool. Even simple things like this little wall, you can see how sloped it is, how gradual everything is. So we even have a small little well here. Lots of custom trees throughout. So it's kind of funny, before I played Ardacraft the first time, I had never actually seen the Lord of the Rings movies. And playing on this server and talking with Fornad and interacting with the Ardacraft community really inspired me to actually check out the movies. And coming back and playing this map with a little bit more knowledge than I had before really helps me appreciate what they've built here. So cutting through a small little graveyard, we're finally at the windmill here. I think the graveyard is kind of a nice contrast from the peaceful windmill that we have. And you can also see the wind sails moving in the wind thanks to the create mod. But let's step inside here. So like I was saying, the amount of detail that actually goes into the inner workings of all the builds is really amazing. So, you know, not only do the builds look great from an aesthetic standpoint, they actually serve a purpose in the lore of the world. So, you know, things like the windmill are actually here to help with the farmland. And we can also see some smoke coming up from this little chimney that we saw on the bottom floor here. So let's make our way to Rivendell now. Here we are in Rivendell right now, and Rivendell is one of my favorite locations from The Lord of the Rings. I think if I had to stay at any place from the movies, it would definitely be here. But let's make our way down there. So Ardacraft utilizes commands that allow you to warp between locations, which helps make traveling very easy. But this is all on the same map, so you could walk from Bree all the way to Rivendell if you'd like to. But I love the surrounding areas, and especially the landscaping. So Ardacraft has so many different team members, and most of them have different specializations. So some people really like doing structures like Rivendell here, and then other people even like doing landscapes. You can definitely tell a lot of care goes into the landscaping around the builds here, with just the amount of texture that goes on. And even the short little walk down the pathway here takes a solid minute or two. And I feel like Rivendell by itself could honestly be its own location, but the fact that this is just one location really, it just kind of blows my mind. But before we head up to the actual building, I just want to take a look around the grounds. I can't get over the water in Bliss, it just looks so good. So making our way over a small little footbridge here. I want to actually make my way over to that waterfall there because that looks pretty cool. But as we get closer to the building, you can just see how much detail goes into the exterior. So you can see with using Conquest Reforged how much detail can be put into the builds. The amount of depth that Conquest Reforged adds to building really can get showcased to its fullest extent here. And not only is Rivendell itself beautiful, but the surrounding landscapes as well just look absolutely stunning. So let's take a look around the grounds here, just passing by a small little horse stable. I like all the little winding pathways you can actually walk along. I could definitely imagine having a nice little audiobook playing, or maybe your favorite YouTube videos playing in the background as you explore the world. And just every single path you walk along just leads somewhere, which I think is such a cool detail and what truly makes Ardacraft special. But here we are at a nice little vineyard. So right now the time is noon in game, but I want to actually change the time and see how the lighting changes. So right now we're just at a little bee farm just on the side of the hill here. But let's open up our menu and change it to, let's say, sunrise, for example. So you can see sunrise, where Rivendell is on the map. It doesn't really get a lot of sunlight during this time of day. But you can see during sunset here, it gives Rivendell such a beautiful warm glow. And from this perspective, the valley looks absolutely stunning. So this to me honestly looks like Red Dead Redemption 2 or even Kingdom Come Deliverance. I think if you were to take a screenshot from this and say this was Minecraft, people really wouldn't believe you. But let's make our way inside now and actually explore Rivendell. I'm going to quickly change it back to noontime so we have nice neutral lighting. So stepping inside here, you can see we have nice doors thanks to the Create mod. The interior is just stunning. You can see compared to Bree how much nicer Rivendell is. And you can just see how ornate this structure is with all the columns and chandeliers and different archways. In the movies, Rivendell is this nice oasis kind of location that the characters stop at. And to me, if I had to pick a location to actually live in, I would want to be here. But let's make our way through the halls here and see what rooms we can find. So there's a lot of rooms off to the side of the main hallway here. Got a nice kitchen here. Definitely super peaceful. I love the huge open window. Something else I really like doing is actually exploring maps like Ardacraft, because then I can find inspiration for my own Minecraft worlds. You know, you can apply these same sort of building techniques even to just vanilla Minecraft. You know, for example, using stairs, using different blocks to create intricate little details and textures. Nice little side room here. So Rivendell is actually multiple floors. And right now we're just on the main floor. So let's step outside here so we can get a better look at this side of the building. So stepping out on this side, we get a much clearer view of this face of Rivendell. And we can see that beautiful stream just running along. But this just looks absolutely stunning. And like I was saying in the intro, I recently upgraded my computer and the game is running super smooth. I'm getting around 90 FPS, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you also have to remember that Minecraft is pretty hard to run, like notoriously hard to run. So I think upgrading to AM5 is really helping me, really helping the computer run smoother here, especially with things like shaders and distant horizons. That takes up a lot of resources. So it looks like this leads down to a lower floor. I eventually want to make my way to the upper floor, but I like how on the lower floor here you can see that there's columns of stone to support the structure above. And just every little piece of the build here just feels nice and unique and just kind of makes sense. So we have like a little cellar here. There's not any sort of copy and pasted elements. Just the amount of time that the builders actually dedicated to even just a single location is kind of mind-blowing. You could definitely walk through these locations just for hours, exploring everything, really immersing yourself in the landscape. I love these little subterranean sections, just how dark they are. Super cool. Looks like through here's a little bath. Like, I'm such a sucker for the details, so you can see how the tile is slightly above the lip of the pool there. That to me just looks so cool. You know, and it's just like, it's the little details like that whenever you step back and look at the whole picture, it really creates these vivid looking screenshots that you can see. And there's even the detail of this being like a heated pool here. So you have a little steam room over here to keep the water warm. And towels and food. Definitely could come and relax in here after a long day. But I want to make my way back upstairs now. We have another little passageway up there we could double back on. But let's head down in here. So you can see making our way down here how the structure is actually blending into the terrain now. So the mountain underneath. And this brings us much closer to the water down here. I love as we're making our way around the map, you can just hear like nature sounds playing. And I have some music playing in the background as well. It's just really peaceful. And also the fact that this map was made by a team of volunteers. Like, nobody's getting paid to make this map. It's just all made for the love of, you know, Tolkien's works, and it really does feel special because of that. Down here's just a little forge. I like the inclusion of like actually using smoke blocks here instead of just using like a fire pit. And we also have little coal deposits here. Looks really cool. So let's head back upstairs because I actually want to visit a pretty iconic location from The Lord of the Rings. So making our way back through the hallway and then outside again, we actually find where they formed the Fellowship of the Ring. So this is where they decided who was going to take the ring to Mordor to get it destroyed. So this is really cool. It's actually cool to be here in the game, especially after having just watched the movies. But yeah, I really like the elven locations just because of their high fantasy sort of aesthetic. So we have a lot of little mountain passes here that we can make our way along. So after Rivendell, I want to actually head to Moria, and there's a couple more locations I want to check out today as well. But before we do that, I just want to explore some of the upper floors of Rivendell here. So right now we have a nice little courtyard view here. I think if I was to stay here, I'd definitely want this room just because it has a nice interior view. So you can see, since it's an elven settlement, we have lots of books and scrolls for studying. I think upstairs is where the main sort of rooms are here. I like this one as well. It has a beautiful view of the valley out here. Nice little seating area where you could like read, relax. But let's see what other rooms we can kind of explore and find our way into. This would be so much fun to play like in a survival world. Like if you actually built this in survival, that would just be so crazy. Imagine having this as like a server for friends, like everybody lives in the same sort of house. This room definitely has a beautiful view. And this is kind of that like iconic balcony section from the front of the build. So making our way to the top floor now. There's just kind of endless rooms that you can make your way through, and they're all nicely decorated. So up here is where they keep all the scrolls and the books. I like these little cushions that you can sit on. Sort of my unrealistic dream house is I'd love to have just a huge library that you could like kind of sit around at and just enjoy like a nice quiet morning or lazy afternoon. So I don't want to explore all of Rivendell in a single video. I would highly suggest you guys check out the server for yourself. I'll leave a link in the description for a tutorial that Ardacraft did showcasing how to actually install this mod pack for yourself. I think the best way to experience this mod pack is playing it for yourself and experiencing it in game. So now let's make our way out of Rivendell and towards Moria. So here we are in Moria. Super huge contrast from the bright airiness of Rivendell. And this is actually where the Balrog fights with Gandalf here. Super cool. So for Moria, you have to actually change your shaders. So I switched over to Rethinking Voxels. And Moria is actually so big that it actually takes up its own entire map. So you can walk to the outside of Moria, but whenever you enter inside of it, it actually loads into a different map entirely. So the last time I checked out Moria, my computer definitely couldn't handle it because you have to switch to a different shader. But this just looks absolutely fantastic. You can just see the scale of the map here. And what's really cool was whenever I was doing the video with Fornad, he was actually kind of showcasing like how much thought goes into the actual rock formations here. So, you know, from an aesthetic standpoint, it looks really cool, but there's actually like geology that they had to study up on to make sure that the materials used in Moria here were accurate to what would actually be there in Middle-earth. So, but the scale here is just incredible. Like, this is such a cool build. And Moria actually doesn't really get a whole lot of screen time in the movies, I feel like. But it's actually a lot bigger than it's led on to be. So you could literally spend hours like wandering through here. So you can see we just hit a little warp. So now we're back on the main Ardacraft map here. So Rethinking Voxels is a real-time lighting shader. So you can see as we make our way around, the shadows are kind of following where the light source is. So here we are making our way back outside. And if I quickly switch it over to daytime, you can see we get a much better view of the exterior here. But now that it's daytime, I want to actually head back in here because I feel like during the daytime you get some really unique and interesting lighting effects that happen in here. So for example, you can actually see the light rays shining through the ceiling here, which is really, really cool. Let me actually remove my torch here so we get a much better view of the light ray coming through here. It's a really cool detail that they actually built around the shaders here to actually capitalize and really emphasize the build. So jumping over to some behind the scenes looks here, this is a location called the Moria Guide. And you can see here all the different stone that was actually used throughout the build. It's kind of like a museum here. So this is where builders who are working on the project can actually come in and actually look at the different palettes that are being used. So, you know, limestone, for example. Again, it's kind of hard to show this whole server in a single video. So I highly suggest you guys check it out for yourself. And what's cool is that the community is super welcoming. So I was actually surprised to see that, you know, not only did Fortnad reach out to me to actually do a video together, but also the community themselves of builders, super knowledgeable, and they're more than willing to show you around the server. Yeah, I think it's really cool to see these behind the scenes kind of looks, because a lot of thought goes into the server, not just from an aesthetic standpoint, but also things like the reasoning behind why things are the way they are. So it looks like over in this section we actually have some orcs, which is pretty cool. So again, some works in progress here. Really, really cool. This kind of reminds me of like the museum from Modern Warfare 2, if you guys have ever played that game. But yeah, this is just for Moria, so there's different locations like this specifically for the farmland that we see a lot of. But these are just some examples of like how the ruins are kind of built and constructed. So it's really, really fascinating to see how everything is kind of made piece by piece here. So what's kind of cool about Ardacraft is you can actually apply to be a builder. They actually have a nice, well-documented process for you to kind of do. So exiting Moria now, let's actually head to Lothlorien. If you're curious what the walk up to Moria actually looks like, just like the movies, you kind of make your way up to the stone here, and you can enter in through this passageway. So here we are in the woods of Lothlorien. You can hear some birds chirping, and this is a stark contrast from the mines of Moria. So again, another really iconic location from the Lord of the Rings. So Lothlorien is where Frodo meets Galadriel, and it's definitely a very, very peaceful place, especially to walk through. I think what's kind of cool is you can see how much difference there is in the landscape, you know, from the woods of Lothlorien to the mountains that we see off in the distance. And even the woods of Lothlorien here is just a massive project, and we haven't even made it to the main city quite yet. But you can see here is where the things like the custom trees really make a huge difference. So like I was saying before, none of the terrain here is randomly generated, so there's not like a mod pack that you can download that automatically creates trees like this. All of this was handmade by players. So as you make your way through the woods, you can find little elf settlements that are on the outskirts here. And actually noticing the farmland here reminded me of a little detail that Fortnad was telling me about. So if you open up your menu here, it'll tell you the exact date and time. And that time is very specific because you can see the harvested plants here based on the time of the year that it is. So I think that's a really cool little element and detail that they threw in there. So not only does the time of year affect the actual harvesting times for the plants, but a little bit later on when we head to Minas Tirith, it'll also give us a beautiful view of the nighttime sky, and we can actually see some constellations. So you can see, making our way to the top of the tree here, we have a beautiful view of the main city as well as the land surrounding it. So here we are at the gates of Caris Galadon. Such a beautiful elven city, especially in the movies, but exploring it in the game here is just totally next level. And I remember on my old computer walking through these areas, definitely really made my computer struggle just because there's so much going on here. In the daytime, it looks absolutely stunning, but if we switch to nighttime, it just breathes a whole new perspective in here. So you can see at nighttime, with the bliss shaders, there's a lot of contrast, and it really makes the glow of the world stand out more. But I'll quickly switch it back to daytime just for visibility's sake. So again, this is a build that could honestly just stand on its own, but the fact that it's all interconnected and you can walk between all the locations from Middle-earth, it's kind of mind-blowing, honestly. I really like Cariscaladon just because you can see all the trees, how big they are. The roots are kind of going through the ground here. Just a super peaceful, high fantasy location. Seeing all the lights everywhere, I definitely want to try and recreate something like this in my own Minecraft worlds. And while we're here, let's make our way up one of these trees. So when I was a kid, some of my favorite builds to do were actually tree houses, but this obviously just takes that to a whole new level. And I think that's part of the reason why I like Cariscaladon so much. It's just a super mystical place. It has a really cool feel to it. I definitely like things like this, just little seating areas that you can look out in the world from, enjoy your drinks, enjoy your books that you can read. And again, being elven, there's lots of scrolls everywhere. And you can just see the architecture here is a huge contrast, especially a little bit later on when we go to locations like Helm's Deep. Just how much the builds actually change depending on where you are. But absolutely stunning. This build is just absolutely gorgeous. Oh, I can't get over this build, man. It looks so good. Kind of making your way around, it's almost like a maze, just how interconnected everything is. Nice little seating area. And way off in that direction, we can actually see the river. So that was a nice little brief look of Lothlorien as well as Cariscaladon. And now, just like the movie, I want to follow the river along to our next location. We're at the Argornath here. I think it's really cool that you're able to follow the river all the way down here. And I think the builders just did an absolutely fantastic job on this set piece. These look really cool. And from up here you get just a stunning view of the lake, as well as the falls just off in the distance there. So let's make our way down there, see if we can get a closer look. So I remember on my old computer, areas like this really would stress out my computer, and it would crash pretty consistently, but things seem to be running pretty smoothly now. And I also feel like the bliss shaders were updated just a little bit as well. Things just look a little bit different from how I remember them being. But stepping up to the water here, I really love the way the water looks. Whenever you see screenshots online of Minecraft worlds using the bliss shaders, one of the things that really stands out is the water. So a little bit further down, now we're just above the falls. And while we're here in the water, I might as well take a dip in here. So you can see whenever you're moving through the water, swimming through it, there's a lot of murkiness here. Lots of dust, so you can't really see too far. But I really like the water effects from whenever you bob your head out and whenever you go back through. Really cool effect. But here we are at the falls. So from the top of the falls, you just get a beautiful view outwards. And again, making our way along here, you can see how much work just goes into the actual landscaping here. So lots of texturing, lots of detail and structure put into this. But it's really kind of amazing how far Minecraft modding has come. So, you know, things like Distant Horizons is something we take for granted now. It's something we've seen a lot of. But, you know, it's weird to think this is actually Minecraft. And it really inspires me just what people are capable of creating. And the fact that all this landscape was handmade by players is just super incredible to me. And Distant Horizons really lets us appreciate that. So checking out the falls here, you can see the builders actually went into the detail of creating the mist and the water using different translucent blocks here. So that way, as you're looking at the falls from a distance, it actually translates a lot better. Because whenever you're using things like Distant Horizons, only like certain blocks actually get rendered. So if they were to just use plain water here, you wouldn't actually be able to see it from far away. So if we take a little look back here, you can see it looks really good from a distance here. So let's actually make our way to the top of the hill here, so that way we can get a better view. But yeah, it's kind of funny to think about. I never actually watched The Lord of the Rings before the first time I had played on Ardacraft, so I was kind of going through it mostly blind and just really appreciating the world from a Minecraft player's perspective. And I don't really have like a deep knowledge about The Lord of the Rings as far as the books or anything like that. But after watching the movies and seeing how things kind of translate into a Minecraft world, it totally blows my mind. And just the fact that the Ardacraft community is so helpful and so nice. On one of my earlier videos, some of the members from Ardacraft reached out to me and they suggested, different worlds to check out, or they offered to show me different parts of the world. And it was really, really cool. So if you guys are fans of the Lord of the Rings, I highly suggest you check them out. I'll leave a link in the description for their channel. We still have a couple more locations that I really want to check out, so let's quickly jump over. So of course, I don't think it'd be a proper showcase of this map if we didn't stop off at Isengard. Definitely one of the most iconic locations, and being able to walk through it in Minecraft is really such a treat, especially heading up towards the gate here. I really like the inclusion of these automatic doors. I think it's such a fun little feature. And before we actually head to Isengard, I want to actually check out some of the interior locations here, just along the wall. So I'm assuming these are just the guard quarters throughout here, and some storerooms as well. We can actually make our way up to the top level here. So on the second floor, I've never actually seen this location, so this is actually inside the walls here. You can see plenty of arrows to kind of watch the roads. This is actually super cool. But making our way up to the top floor, now we get a much better view of the surrounding landscapes, as well as the tower in the middle. So before I had watched the movies, I'd recognized Isengard from, I don't know, I guess I've seen it before. So this was one of the only locations that I actually recognized visually, but it was really cool to actually watch the movies and now being able to play the game and explore this in real time here. But I love exploring like these random little nooks and crannies that like you don't really see in the movies, but are just kind of implied to be there. Also a little bit later on, we'll be heading to Helm's Deep, which is another really cool location that I love to check out. Also from the wall here, you can see some of the surrounding farmscapes and different homesteads that they have out there. But let's make our way through the gardens here and head towards the tower. So back on the ground floor here, I really love the gardens of Isengard. I think it's super peaceful. You can hear some birds kind of chirping. And unfortunately, I can't have the Lord of the Rings music playing because it's copyright, but I usually add in Skyrim music because I think it's really beautiful. I think what's really cool about Isengard is just how much contrast there is. So, you have these really lush gardens and then you just have this super dark monument in the middle of everything. Actually, what's kind of cool is this wagon. I actually recreated something like this in my Minecraft world that I've been playing on in creative mode. This world really just inspires me in a lot of ways to actually try out Conquest Reforged. And the ingenuity that goes into building things here is just, it's really incredible, right? Because at the core of it, this is just Minecraft. And it's all made by players, so sometimes there's not really objects in play, so you have to actually make those objects. I really like this scene here with the bridge with the wagon crossing over it. Super, super peaceful. But yeah, if you ever want to find build ideas, I think Ardacraft is a great place to look. And I've only shown like a fraction of the locations on Ardacraft. I mean, it's literally very difficult to articulate how large this map actually is. And pretty much every time you log in, you're going to be able to notice more details that maybe you didn't see before. And I think that's what keeps me coming back to actually visiting it and exploring it. Got beautiful little gardens here. Let's make our way into the tower. Take a look at that. What's really cool is that walking through this world in Minecraft really lets you appreciate the scale of the world here. So Isengard, even though it looks visually impressive, when you're actually playing in-game, it's actually massive compared to your player model. And even just flying around the map takes multiple minutes to reach the top of the tower here. But I love how Isengard just stands out against the landscape. Another location I'm actually really excited to check out is Minas Tirith, but we'll be checking that out a little bit later. But you can just see how tall this build actually is. I like the how steep these stairs are too, using all the different slab work that they have. Here we are inside. And I pointed this out before, but these are actually, this is like an old video game developer trick where they actually build what's on the above floor here down below, and it kind of looks like a reflection in the glass. So that's a super cool detail that I really, really like. You know, it's one of those things that you don't really, maybe you don't consciously register, but whenever you take a step back and kind of just take your time looking around, it's one of those things that you notice and it's like, wow, somebody actually did that. Yeah, Isengard, super iconic location from the movies. And it's so fun to actually explore all the different passageways because the way this build kind of is, it really feels super organic. It doesn't really feel structured. So it's almost as if the building itself is alive and it's just kind of forming. I like how with the updated version of Bliss, you can actually see some light rays shining through here. So making our way through Isengard here, you can see there's various little stops that you can make as you climb up the staircase. So we got a little dining room here. And I think it's really cool being able to explore all these different rooms kind of at your own pace, you know. So we got even things like storerooms. So what I think is really cool about Isengard is just all the different floors that we have here. And each floor seems to have its own little kind of theme going on here. So we have things like an astronomer lookout here. But I love exploring all these random little nooks and crannies just kind of spread throughout the world here. Just because not everything here gets to be shown in things like the movies. And it's really cool. It really helps bring these locations to life. Actually, over here we found a little dungeon room that they can store the prisoners at. But of course we got to make our way to the roof here. I think what's really interesting about Isengard is how maze-like the interior is, and it actually takes a solid 7 minutes to kind of walk up the entire structure here. But here we are in the main living quarters on the top floor. This is where Saruman would be staying. We have a little bathroom up here. It's really, really cool to explore these more like interesting living spaces. But if we cut through the bedroom here, there's actually like a little side passage here. And then just up the stairs we have some sort of chamber. Looks like up here is where he stores all of his gold and kind of valuables behind these iron gates here. It's really cool. I like this. It's like a little vault up here. Then through here, he keeps his scrolls and his notes. And I wonder if this leads up to the roof. Actually, no. Up here, I think is just the top of the tower. And there's actually, I like this little detail of some birds kind of living up here with some nest eggs. Super cool. I love little details like that. So actually cutting through the main floor here again. I believe this staircase off to the side, this actually leads up to the roof. So you can actually see how narrow the passageways are through here. So it can be kind of disorientating to actually show in the video. But making our way to the roof now. This is obviously where Gandalf gets rescued. And from up here we just get a beautiful view of the surrounding landscapes. So yeah, again, Isengard could really be its own location, just the amount of detail that went into this single spot. But getting a more zoomed out look here, this just looks so amazing from an aerial perspective. And now I want to actually head to Helm's Deep. So here we are at Helm's Deep. And from a distance you can really appreciate the scale of this build. And then a little bit later on I want to actually head to Minas Tirith as well, because that build is just breathtaking to actually see in game. And something I learned recently is actually the large scale builds like Minas Tirith were actually handmade models in the movies. But just crossing beneath a little guard tower here. Looks like on the outskirts are just some watch posts. And even simple things like the watchtowers here I think look really good. Let's actually check out what's in this tent over here too. But there's no detail that was too small or minuscule, so everything is like fully fleshed out and fully detailed. So we got a small little camp out here to keep watch. Get a nice view from out here to see any sort of approaching armies that'd be coming this way. But let's head towards Helm's Deep now. So it's really actually cool to see the state that Helm's Deep is in. So the Ardacraft server actually takes place during a very specific date and time. So as we make our way through Helm's Deep, you'll see how they're making preparations, or they have a lot of armaments ready to defend for a siege. But looking at the keep from down here, it just looks incredible and super intimidating, especially with the surrounding landscapes just kind of framing the building here. I like how Helm's Deep, just like Isengard, really stands out against the nice lush green landscapes. Sometimes I have to kind of remind myself that I'm playing Minecraft right now. And a lot of people kind of wonder why they built all of this in Minecraft versus something like Unreal Engine or some other game engine. And in my video with Fornad, he actually gives a really good explanation for it. And it was something I never really thought about. So if you're interested in hearing that, feel free to check that out. Making our way through here, you can see all the little wood shops here to make all the arrows and tools. You can see just tons and tons of arrows ready to go here. And all kinds of little windows that you can snipe out of. But actually, let's take a look at the backyard here. So on the back here, we just have some guards' quarters and some tents. So all the guards would be staying back here, enjoying maybe some food or meat around the fire there. Super cool. I don't know why. I feel like sleeping in these tents would hit kind of different for some reason. And then over here, we also have a nice little target practice spot. And then there's that drain from the movie. This is so cool. Helm's Deep definitely reminds me the most of like Kingdom Come Deliverance. But you can just see all the preparations that's going on here. And I also like the elements of like wood mixed with the stone. Kind of where the wall was a little bit broken down here. Another really cool element is how you can see they've got blocks of brick here to actually make repairs to the wall. And of course you have that iconic sewer entryway over here. But yeah, that would be so crazy seeing like an army out there and you're just like on the wall here having to defend your position from the keep here. Let's actually take a look at this far off watchtower over here, see what's going on in this room. I'm a huge fan of just like random little storerooms like this. It just gives the build so much character. And from here, obviously we get a nice view of Helm's Deep as well. But making our way back to the main castle keep here, I think what's really cool about Helm's Deep is actually the design here. So there's multiple layers of defense going on here. And anybody attacking the castle would theoretically have to like make their way through the front entryway and kind of loop all the way around this inner sanctum here. You can see lots of stone being moved here to make any necessary repairs. You kind of pass by some stables. So I think if you were to come through the front gate, actually attacking Helm's Deep would be quite the challenge. Here we got some like prison cells. And you can eventually make your way like into the inner circle here. So before we make our way inside, let's actually take a look at the walls here. So up the stairs, now we're on top of one of the towers. We get a much better view of all the defenses. So lots and lots of arrows just ready to go to shoot down on anybody coming through the gate there. And just so much visibility, definitely a really strong position here. I also like the little details like the flags on top, so we definitely got to see what the view looks like from up there. But you can also kind of notice all the little texturing going on here, so as you make your way up the build, all the stonework that went into this, and even just around the build too, like it's not all one singular texture or block, it's a bunch of different blocks all melded together and blended together super seamlessly. So it gives the builds that really realistic kind of look and feel. So before we head inside the main build, I want to actually check out this little side room here. So I guess it's just like an inner guardhouse. And actually from here they have like more little window positions that they can shoot from. So you can definitely see they have a lot of work to do with all the arrows. Yeah, I like this little guard room. This is super cozy. Got the nice fire down here, keeping everybody warm. But you can definitely tell Helm's Deep is just like totally for defensives. It's not really like a cozy place per se. This basement section's actually super creepy. So if I actually turn off my torch there, you can see how dark it is. But it's super cool. I love exploring these little nooks. But let's head inside now. I can only imagine the amount of work that goes into even just a single location on Ardacraft. Because, you know, like I pointed out earlier, all the texturing, it's not really like a simple job or something you can do really fast. It's very like meticulous, and I think that's why this map feels so special. It's just because the amount of love and dedication the team has. So inside the keep here, it's a little bit like cozier in here, but you can definitely tell they have like weapons ready to go. And like just a very small, bare bones kind of kitchen. And again, even in the main keep, you have a lot of like defensive positions that you can take up. Actually, before we make our way upstairs, I wanted to just quickly point out like the different stonework that's going on in the inside here. I think that's a little cool differentiation from the like cold stone that's on the outside. So it gives the interior like a much warmer feel. And here's obviously where the king would be sitting. Little feast hall here. But let's see if we can make our way to the top of the tower. So here we are at the top of the stairwell. I tend to cut out when I'm actually walking up the stairs just because it can be a little disorientating to actually watch. But we have a little latrine here. And then a much nicer living space on the top floor here. So when I was younger, I used to read a lot of books, and I was always obsessed with things like castles for some reason. So I'd read these huge like picture books that were basically like diagrams of how castles actually worked. So walking through Helm's Deep right now just kind of is reminding me of that when I was a kid. Even though obviously this is based on Lord of the Rings. Still really cool to see. But like I was saying before, you can see even with the living quarters here, it's not really cozy. It's just very bare bones, very on the offense here, just ready for any sort of attacks. Looks like we have a small little stairwell going up. I actually really like the contrast of the wood here, sort of creating the scaffolding effect. But here we are in the main room. Definitely a little bit nicer than the guard room, but still pretty bare bones, you know, for what like a king room would really be like. We got a nice little map here, little lockbox, pretty small bed, but I think I really like the tapestry there. But let's make our way to the actual top here so we can get the best view. At the top, we got the banner flying high here. I think it's only right we climb up all the way here so we can really appreciate the view. Yeah, this just looks incredible. So I really can't explore every single location of Ardacraft just because of how massive the server actually is. So if you have any locations you suggest me checking out, let me know in a comment. I'd love to hear your suggestions. But that's a quick little walkthrough of Helm's Deep. Now it's time we actually head to one of the most iconic locations in the Lord of the Rings. So here we are at Gondor's capital, Minas Tirith, and it just looks incredible. But before we take a close-up look at this, I want to show you guys what it looks like from a distance. So currently we're at a town called Liskhorn, and as you can see way off on the distance, we can see Minas Tirith. So Liskhorn's definitely one of my favorite locations in Ardacraft. You can actually see some work in progress going on here. But I absolutely love this town. I think personally this is my favorite build on Ardacraft from what I've seen. But I really wanted to stop off here, that way we could see Minas Tirith from a distance, just to really showcase like the power of distant horizons. Really helps you appreciate the scale of the world. So we're not going to be spending too much time at Liskhorn, but I really wanted to stop off here and just check it out for a few minutes. If you ever join Ardacraft, I highly suggest checking out Liskhorn. It's one of my favorite locations to visit, and it's absolutely stunning. But let's head our way towards Gondor's capital now. So it may not translate very well just how large this build actually is, but when we get on ground you'll actually see how big this structure actually is from a first-person perspective. So back in first person, this is just towering. And honestly, I think what's kind of ridiculous about this is at the beginning we were at Hobbiton, but you could actually make the journey all the way here. It's all one continuous map. So you can see it's very much still a work in progress. I mean, this is a huge build. So the builders have some filler blocks here that they'll come back in and kind of texture out. I think what's really cool about Ardacraft is that it's a real-time project that's actively being worked on. So it's kind of cool to get this behind the scenes, like in progress look. Like these aren't finished structures, these are being made actively by people. I think that's kind of what makes it so special and so cool to explore. I mean, this really could just be its own map project and it would be impressive on its own. But the fact that it's on a map and it's just one of many locations is just really mind-blowing. I actually really like this little structure here. But we definitely have to make our way to the top of the tower there. So to put in perspective how tall this actually is, it takes a solid couple of minutes to even just fly up here in free cam mode. But from the top here, we obviously get the best view of Gondor from here. And way off in that direction is Liskorn that we were at a little bit ago. So here we are, just outside the gate. Let's make our way up the stairs here. Now we get a much better look at the courtyard up here. Really, really beautiful. This is just super stunning. And after we explore the interior, I actually want to showcase something even more crazy in the sky. So it looks like this hall is nicely decorated. I really feel like there's no easy way to do a build like this. Everything just kind of has to be done one piece at a time. And just to think about like all the care and attention that goes into builds like this, because Ardacraft is building Middle-earth based on the book, so a lot of attention and care goes into actually making sure the builds are a good representation of what's in the books. But making our way back outside, I want to quickly switch over to nighttime, and I'm also going to quickly turn off shaders. So you might be wondering why I decided to turn off shaders, but I really wanted to point out the stars in the sky. So Fortnite actually pointed out that they had a real astrologer actually map out, based on the time in which Ardacraft is actually taking place here, like what the night sky would actually look like. So the constellations that you would see, where the moon would be. And I think that detail is just kind of what really blew my mind and really made me appreciate what they have here. So quickly coming back to daytime, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if nothing else, I really want you guys to check out Ardacraft. I think this is such an incredible server and incredible community. Like I was saying, I don't really have the deepest knowledge about Middle-earth or the lore behind everything. I'm very much just a casual Lord of the Rings fan of the movies, so a lot of my perspective is just coming from somebody who enjoys playing Minecraft and appreciating the build that they have here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe to Ardacraft as well. They have a YouTube channel that I'll have linked in the description. Alrighty, see you guys in the next one.